Welcome to Heartbreak Revealed. Discover real stories of wives, betrayals, and shocking twists. Hit subscribe button and let's get to our story. I was staring at my computer screen when she walked into our condo. She'd been coming home late from her job for months, and tonight was no different. It was nearly 9 p.m. The kids and I had already had dinner and finished our homework. They'd been in bed for about an hour. They didn't even ask about Mom or why she wasn't home. This was a new development and it made me sad. I'd spent the last hour reviewing our finances from the past 2 years. Things had gotten really tight. Our income had taken a significant hit, but my wife didn't seem to notice. She still spent money like we had plenty. I had just finished paying the last of the bills. We might be able to hang on for another couple of months. I had also revised my life plan, thinking maybe I'd made a mistake. For the past 2 years, I'd been staring at a ticking time bomb, wondering if it would ever explode. Lately, I'd been getting lost in my own thoughts more and more often. Finally, with her arms crossed and a familiar look of contempt on her face, she spoke, "Mark, I want a divorce." I'm not sure what feelings I had at that moment. My spirit was so loaded with doubt and self-loathing that I was almost numb to any new emotions. Actually, it wasn't all that funny, but I still tried to suppress my laughter. My wife of 15 years just told me that it's over between us, that everything we've built together will eventually be torn apart. I hadn't felt this kind of emotion in a long time, and it almost made me smile relief. I looked at her for just a moment, allowing myself to be transported one last time to our happier times. Then I came back to reality. Fine. I was a better programmer than manager, unfortunately. Programmers get promoted to project managers, then to department heads, and finally to senior management. That's how I ended up as a senior product development manager. It was just a fancy title for a salesman. In fact, I was the most qualified for the position at the time. I created our flagship product line almost single-handedly. I nurtured it through its infancy, helped it grow through 6 successive upgrades. I knew our product better than anyone. When clients had questions, I had answers. When our employees had problems, I knew how to solve them. Add in a new haircut and an overpriced suit, and I looked the part. The salary increase and benefits that came with my promotion didn't hurt either. I would say I was mostly happy with my job, but I loved programming and missed it a lot. In my position, I didn't have the opportunity to code. There were simply too many meetings and phone calls to have the luxury of going back to lines of code. I was forced to watch a new batch of young, bright-eyed guys trying to outdo each other with their latest developments. I won't lie. Being the boss was worth it, but I always wanted my job responsibilities to be a little different. It was no surprise when I was fired from Austin Tech Innovations. If I were the boss, I would do the exact same thing. My attendance at meetings had been sporadic at best, and too many deadlines had been missed. At that time, I didn't try to get fired, but I didn't really make any attempt to keep my job at ATI. I was depressed for a long time. It took me almost 4 months to get out of my initial depression and try to move on, but this was not crowned with success either. It took me another month to find a way out of the predicament I found myself in, at least one I could live with. I think I would have gone crazy if I didn't have the kids. They had a flawless routine that helped me get my life back on a positive track: breakfast, school, snacks, homework, dinner, and sleep. Breakfast, school, snack, homework, dinner, bed. This was my mantra, and it helped me find my way. I threw myself into my work as a stay-at-home dad. I took over all the housework and taxi duties. The kids sincerely rejoiced at my presence in the house. It made me realize that I have some value. I wasn't completely worthless. If my wife sensed these changes in our family dynamic, she never spoke about it. I'm pretty sure she didn't even notice. I met Linda Harris at a college party. I almost decided not to go. I joined the fraternity for the doors it would open after college, not to attend parties while I was there. I decided that I would need all the help I could get. My grades were excellent, so it wasn't a concern. However, everything else about me was just average height, weight, appearance, character average. My name, Mark, was the most popular name in the 1980s, completely average too. To be honest, when I was away from the computer, there was nothing so unique about me. Dates? I had several relationships. Well, not much. I was pretty good at keeping myself company, even in my senior year of college, until I saw Linda Harris. Linda was almost as ordinary as I was. I realized that the average woman looks much better. She was a little withdrawn. I watched her for quite some time before I plucked up the courage to speak to her. Our first meeting was short and quiet, but the acquaintance took place. Over the next few weeks, we met for coffee and studied in the library together. We talked for almost 2 months before our first real date. From that moment on, the most fantastic time in my life began 14 years of bliss. Our courtship was short, and our engagement even shorter. Shortly after graduating, we got married and moved into our first apartment in Denver. We took the morning and evening train to and from our first job. We barely made ends meet, but we were together. We had almost everything in common: family stories, dating experiences, common interests and goals. Where we did not coincide, we merged. If I couldn't do something, Linda did it. If she had a flaw, it was one of my strengths. I managed our shared finances better. Linda was better at managing our social and family schedules. We worked together, and our lives began to improve quickly over the next few years. We were both promoted several times. Our group of friends expanded significantly. We were able to save money to buy our first home, as well as travel and have fun. Our sex life started out just like our relationship slowly. We'd been holding hands and kissing since our first date. We switched to active petting when we realized we had an exclusive relationship. Our virginity lasted until the night of our engagement. Since then, our passion has grown along with our shared success. Linda quit her job 7 years later when our son Ryan was born. A little over a year later, our daughter Emma was born. Yes, I know their names were the most popular when they were born. It was kind of a family tradition. We bought a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs with room for a dog. We bought a family sedan and a minivan. In general, our life was going well: 2 children, a pet, a house, and 2 cars. Totally average. I didn't think I could be happier. I was wrong. My promotion to manager happened shortly after Emma's first birthday. It was almost like a reward for the years of being ignored as one of the middle class and not complaining. Like I said, my new salary was unremarkable, and we weren't complaining. I had a flexible schedule and worked from home most days, coming into the office for staff and management meetings. They say money can't buy happiness. I believe this is true, but what you can buy are stylish clothes, better grooming, better medical care, a new home in a better area, and self-confidence. I went from average to slightly above average. My wife went from average, which I thought was beautiful, to slightly above average, which I thought was damn sexy. Our sex life, which I had always considered good, reached a new level. We traveled more and were able to spend time with our children while saving more and more money for retirement. When Emma started elementary school, Linda decided she wanted to go back to work part-time. She quickly found a job she thought she would enjoy at a startup marketing firm. She went to the office when she took the kids to school. She would end her day when it was time to pick them up. This was the icing on the cake. We didn't need her salary, so we were able to save it. My projection was that by the time the kids graduated from college, we would be able to retire and live very comfortably. I found out that my wife was cheating on me by accident 3 months before our 14th wedding anniversary. It was my birthday, in fact. I found evidence 2 days before my birthday. I just didn't know it. It took me a few weeks to put everything together. I overlooked the fact that my wife wanted to take a more active role in her new job. This meant she would have to work a few more hours a week, and I would have to pick up the kids from school, but it didn't affect my schedule at all, and I was glad about that. After about 3 months, I noticed that she was often distracted. I asked her about it. She replied that she was trying to find herself in the office and was a little stressed. I decided to take on more responsibilities around the house to lighten her load a little. When our passionate sex life began to noticeably decline, we talked about it. She said she was getting older and didn't need as much as she used to. Our sex life picked up steam for a few weeks, but then faded away again. I didn't dare talk about it again for fear of a quarrel. I was almost at my breaking point when I discovered the gift. The weather had cooled considerably, and I was looking for one of my sweaters. I had taken on the duties of a laundress, and more than once got confused about which closet my clothes should be put in. I was sorting through sweaters on the shelf of her closet when I saw it behind some old shoe boxes. It was hard not to notice the pink box and white ribbon from the lingerie store were unmistakable. The card addressed to my beloved one excited me. A small war of thoughts flared up in my head for a moment. Should I watch? Should I wait? I decided to take a look. I wasn't sure I could wait until my birthday to surprise my wife after reading the card. Please forgive the packaging. This gift came in. You can unwrap the real gift on your birthday when I wear what's in the box. Love, Linda. I was excited and nervous at the same time. Over the next 48 hours, I stepped up my game. I made sure to meet her at the door with flowers, give her a foot massage, and cook her favorite dinner. Her reaction was not what I expected. It looked like she was tolerating my affection. On my birthday, I made sure the kids finished their homework early. I didn't want any problems to interfere with my gift. I was a little surprised when Linda came home late from work. I was even more confused when she asked me what was for dinner, but I was ready to play along. To my surprise, I suggested we go eat pizza. The kids had fun, and we went. I made an arrangement with the waiter, and just before leaving, the waiter serenaded me with happy birthday. I thought I saw surprise in my wife's eyes, but she quickly recovered. "I'll give you your gift later, Mark," she said, smiling. The road home was stressful for me. I almost had an accident. The 15 minutes while the kids got ready for bed was brutal, but the 15 minutes after that, while they fell asleep, was excruciating. Luckily, Linda returned from an emergency trip to the store to buy milk shortly after they fell asleep. When I arrived at the bedroom door, Linda was not in the room. I sat down on the bed. A few moments later, she emerged from the bathroom wearing a flannel nightgown, no makeup on her face, and her hair in a ponytail. By this point, I was starting to get a little disillusioned with the games. When will I receive my gift? She slid into bed and crawled under the covers. She reached over to turn off the bedroom lamp, but stopped. Oops, I almost forgot. She opened a drawer on her nightstand and pulled out a small square box wrapped in the colorful balloon paper we had used for Ryan's last birthday, and handed it to me. "Happy birthday, honey." And that was all. She rolled over, turned off the light, and fell asleep. I was too shocked to even open her gift. The next day, my depression began in full force. I replayed the events of the day over and over again in my head and could not understand what I had done that had so clearly ruined our evening. I was completely confused. I remained in despair for almost 2 weeks. This damn gift almost flashed a pink light at me, announcing my failure. I've heard all these cliches, the husband will be the last to know, etc. I have to be honest and say that I was truly in the dark. The idea of her cheating on me was so foreign that I never, not once, thought it was possible. But that was the first thing that came to my mind when she called home 13 days after my birthday and said that she would be home late. It's Alex's 30th birthday, and his staff is inviting him to a celebration. I might be late. I don't remember answering her or going to the closet in the bedroom, but I do remember looking at the empty space where my gift once stood for longer than I cared to admit. I thought I might be having a heart attack, and for a few moments hoped it was true, and that I would die soon. Alex Mason was Linda's bossa smarmy, arrogant advertising executive, who was several years younger than both Linda and me. I only met him once, but I remember not liking him very much, mainly because he seemed so insincere when he spoke. Emma brought me to my senses. "Are you okay, Dad?" A few seconds passed before my eyes focused on my daughter, who was hovering over me on the verge of tears. "I'm fine, honey. Dad just ate something his stomach didn't like. I'll be out in a minute. I just need to get myself in order." I did eventually get out of the bathroom, although I don't remember much after that. I remember grabbing my dusty bottle of bourbon. Judging by the headache the next morning, I knew I had had several glasses. I had no idea when Linda came home. When I found her in the kitchen this morning feeding the kids, she didn't look like anything unusual had happened. She was just going about her normal business, and only the slight shudder that I saw on her face when she sat down to eat killed all the remaining love in me. It was very subtle, but it was there. I would like to write about how I stood up to my cheating wife, but I didn't. I was simply devastated. It was all I could do to move on, and for several weeks I didn't get better. I was like a zombie every day. When I realized that my wife was calmly doing household chores, I felt worse and worse. I thought I had hit rock bottom. It took me the weekend of my 14th wedding anniversary to shake myself up and decide to take action. I probably wouldn't have done anything. I acted like a weakling. I knew it. I wish I could say I was shocked. There's probably some technical psychological terminology for my behavior. If my father were alive, He would simply say that I acted like a weakling. He would be right. It wasn't until my wife announced that she had to go to a work conference that the fog cleared from my thoughts. She wouldn't be around for our anniversary. I don't know why this mattered to me. It was just another level of disrespect. But it hurt mostly because she gave no indication that she even knew about the date. After drinking myself into oblivion on the night of our anniversary, I woke up angry. I'd reached my limit. I called my lawyer and made an appointment. I was going to end this farce. I was sure that my life couldn't get any worse. I was wrong. The take-no-prisoners attitude with which I walked into the lawyer's office gave way to crushing disbelief. I knew divorce could be difficult. I thought cheating on my wife would work in my favor. Instead, my lawyer punched hole after hole in my case. I had no evidence of cheating. If I had proof, it wouldn't matter. My wife would have the right to divide our property 5,050. I had no evidence that my wife was a bad parent. My best hope would be joint custody. The difference in income also worked in my wife's favor. I would pay spousal support and alimony. Most likely, my wife would get primary custody and the right to remain in the house for the benefit of the kids. My wife was a cheater, and I was a buffoon. I went from depressed to upset. My wife even asked me about it a few weeks later. "You really don't look good, Mark. Is something bothering you?" "No, darling." At least she pretended to care, and I just wandered through life. Then I was fired. I didn't know it then, but it was the best thing that happened to me. The evening news gave me a glimmer of hope. I watched depressing story after depressing story, and it seemed to fit my mood perfectly. But then this happened: a major employee on the East Coast went bankrupt. Former employees were struggling to get their final paycheck and were worried about their pensions. It seemed to me that some people might be in a worse situation than me. Then the talking head appeared on the screen again with its analysis. The employees will likely win the lawsuit against their former employer, but it will not make a difference. Nothing's left. All the money's gone. It didn't take me long to connect the dots and come up with a plan of action. My wife couldn't take what wasn't there. We wouldn't have anything, so we wouldn't share anything. Of course, at the same time, I was screwing myself up, but I was still going to lose half of it. Did I really care about the rest? My plan started out simple enough. I was unemployed and had no intention of looking for a job. I was going to spend our savings until there was nothing left. I admit it was a crazy idea. I didn't even think it would work, but it was something I could grab onto. 2 years is a long time. I was painfully bored when I was alone, which was almost always. I realized that Linda truly was the lifeblood of our friend group. When she distanced herself from me, I discovered that I didn't have any truly strong friendships. I was an only child. Both my parents died young, my dad from a heart attack, my mom from cancer. I was really alone. For 2 years, my kids were the only thing that was right in my life. I enrolled in an executive MBA program. The university was expensive but local. In one go, I spent almost $25,000. I paid cash for a new luxury SUV 80000. I fully funded my kids' education savings accounts. This cost another $400,000. I spent thousands on a new wardrobe and began withdrawing more and more cash twice a week. I took the kids to school, went to the bank, and drove to the lakeshore. I never gambled with the money I took with me, a few bucks here and there, to keep myself entertained. I spent enough to show that I spent the day at the casino, including receipts for lunch, snacks, and parking. The main amount went into a wall safe in our garage, my personal post-divorce war chest in case things went south. My other expensive purchase: complete private surveillance of my wife and her lover. I asked for everything I needed: videos, photographs, a daily diary of events. I'm embarrassed to say how much it cost me. You're probably wondering if my wife noticed any of my spending. I'd say yes, except for the gambling part. I had to tell her about transferring money to the kids because I needed her signature on the guardian accounts. She saw my car and clothes. She never said anything about them. I'm sure she thought I was working and that we were still living on Easy Street. She also made a few purchases, but I didn't say a word. I've often wondered who benefits from her increased lingerie purchases. It's just that we never discussed this topic. We were cordial with each other and communicated daily. It was like putting up with a roommate we didn't particularly like. Sex? Don't even go there. Time spent with the kids was the highlight of my life. I did my best to support whatever interest they had. We did homework and played games together. We went to parks, rode bikes, and went to the movies. Since I took on the role of home, they seemed interested in helping me. I found some simple recipes and let them do it. Linda was usually around at some point during the week. I didn't exclude her from our family activities, but I didn't make any effort to involve her either. If she was there and wanted to participate, she just did it without saying a word. I received a weekly report about my wife's activities. I thought she was just having Aussie kisses with her boss, but in reality, it was a few guys from her office. A few months later, the company's clients were on its dance map. It was painful, not good. She had already fallen in my eyes. The fact that I now had proof did not move me at all. It wasn't a very interesting sight. In a way, it made me feel better, but not much. It was clear that Alex Mason was not a very skilled lover, although he had the ability to distribute gifts to himself among several different women. This surprised me a little. I assumed, based on her gift, that there was some kind of relationship between him and my wife. But in reality, they were more like sex buddies. It was the same with most of the other 6 men who had fun with my wife. After about a year, it dawned on me that I hadn't had sex since I started my journey. It didn't bother me much. It was just another addition to my wonderful existence. I stopped monitoring after a year. I'd seen enough, and it felt more like a chore to look through the junk they sent me. Despite classes, kids, and gambling, I had a lot of free time. So I decided to focus on my life after marriage, which I assumed would happen someday. I started a new exercise regimen. I've always been in decent shape, nothing special, of course, but during this time, I achieved good results in the bench press and running endurance. I believe that huge muscles and good looks are mostly genetics, and I clearly didn't fit into either of those categories. However, personally, I was very happy with the way I looked. I started researching the latest news about my former industry. I realized that at some point I would need a job. A year away from the madness had left me farther behind than I thought. I spent several hours every day learning the latest technologies and software packages. I took a special interest in my old company, ATI. They seemed to be stagnant. They definitely weren't losing market share. Their revenues were stable, but they weren't gaining traction. In the technology business, if you stand still, you lose. I also spent a significant amount of time studying divorce. I've spent some time devising new, devious plans to ruin the life of my hopefully soon-to-be ex-wife. However, most of my time was spent studying how divorce affects kids. I had already gone through most of my pain, and my kids were a big part of that. I wanted to make sure that when the transition came, I would be fully prepared. There is a huge amount of information out there that I thought was complete nonsense. 8 months into my adventure, I started to panic. My wife began to come home at the usual time, and she started talking to me and asking how my day was. Of course, I answered abruptly, but that didn't bother her. She began to dress more provocatively for bed. It seemed like she was trying to rekindle the intimacy of our old life. A few weeks later, things got even worse. For a year and a half, she did not take part in our lives and minded her own business. Now she complained about the lack of communication. She started talking about working on our marriage, and I stopped talking to her. Complete silence. Her attempts at reconciliation continued until her birthday. I left her gift on the dining table. The wrapping paper must have looked familiar since I used it from the last gift she gave me. The contents shouldn't have been a surprise either. It took me 6 months to open the last birthday gift I received from my wife. It was a watch with a cheap digital dial. When I spotted my birthday gift in the impulse buy section of our neighborhood convenience store, I was very angry. A 15 watch from a fast trade store. The best. Then I saw that they had a suitable women's model. I've come to terms with this. I bought them and waited 18 months to give them to her. I wish I could have seen her reaction, but alas, I wasn't there when she opened it. The kids and I had a movie night and got home quite late. The next day, she left before the kids and I even got up. Suddenly, everything returned to normal. Linda began to stay at the office later and later. We hardly spoke when she was at home, and now finally it happened. Mark, I want a divorce. I hoped she would get it over with quickly, but almost a week passed before I was given her statement. It was almost laughable spousal and child support, unequal distribution of assets in her favor, mental and emotional cruelty listed as relevant factors. I decided to give her until next Monday, and took the kids camping. I didn't want them around because I would release the hounds. We returned 6 days later, rested and refreshed. Linda was waiting for us at home. She was sitting alone in the living room. I think she might have the stomach flu. In any case, she didn't look well. I was wondering which part was the biggest surprise for me. I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. I asked for the house, the only real property we had left, and full custody of the kids. I asked for spousal and child support because I was unemployed and had been taking care of the kids full-time for 2 years. I filed alienation of affection lawsuits against 7 of Linda's sexual partners. I had no illusions that I would win any of them, but the law in Colorado allowed it, so I returned armed. I filed civil lawsuits against her employer and the companies of 3 clients who took advantage of my wife. Again, I didn't think I could win, but bad publicity might work in my favor. Finally, I sent Linda's greatest hits DVD to her parents and best friend, so she knew I wouldn't be afraid to use it. She must have known about the evidence I had against her. All this was stated in my counterclaim, but I did not want to take any risks. The kids had a snack and went to their rooms to get ready for bed. They didn't pay attention to their mother. She made no move to address them. I went to the refrigerator to get a beer. Then I walked into the living room and sat down in the chair opposite Linda. She didn't look at me for a long time, so I just enjoyed my beer. Besides the fact that she felt bad, she seemed to be crying about something. Maybe she was injured. She finally spoke, but it was almost a whisper. "You will destroy me." I waited for her to look up so I could follow her gaze as I answered. It took a few seconds. God, I hope so. I thought this moment would be more intense. When a single tear formed in her eye and then rolled down her cheek, I felt nothing. "Do you hate me that much?" "Oh no, Linda, I don't hate you. Hate takes effort. I can honestly say that I put in absolutely no effort when it comes to you. All my efforts go into taking care of me and my kids. But I'm your wife. Stop. I won't let a piece of trash like you ruin my wife's good name. My wife was a loving and caring woman, my best friend, partner, and mother to my kids. She is dead. You are the trash who has taken over her body. Don't talk like you have anything to do with me." It took a long time before she spoke again. "What should I do now? Is this a rhetorical question, or do you really want to hear my answer?" I didn't let her answer before continuing. "I believe there are several possible solutions to your problem. You can go far, far away and try to start a new life. I would choose this option. I will never allow my kids to spend any meaningful time with you, so this should not influence your decision to leave. Or I guess you could try staying here, hanging around the city, trying to control myself. But who knows who will hear about your little exploits, or who will want to hire someone like you. Maybe you can settle down with some loser who doesn't care what you are like. But what kind of non-entity will this be? Or you can commit suicide. I really hope you don't choose this option. This will prevent me from watching you suffer. But then again, I'm not sure my opinion really matters to you. It definitely didn't matter when you decided to cheat on me with your boss. I'd been dreaming about giving this little speech for months. I should have been glad to be able to say it. As I watched what was left of her spirit crumble word by word, I hoped that I would get some kind of satisfaction. Instead, I just felt empty. Life after the divorce was mixed with the lawsuits. I was doing much better than I had hoped. I received just over $1 million in settlements from 3 companies whose employees slept with my wife. It was surprising because my lawyer told me not to expect much. During the after-game analysis, we decided that after seeing how he handled my ex-wife's company, they didn't want any of the negative publicity. We destroyed my ex-wife's company through discovery motions, depositions, and leaks to the press. I also started my own stealth campaign, emailing the CEOs of their remaining clients with information about my wife, her boss, and their buddies. It took time, but gradually their income dried up. Employees who didn't want to be associated with the scandal quit. Eventually, they filed for bankruptcy. Alex Mason was fired and left town in disgrace. The $250,000 check I received was smaller than my other victories, but much nicer. I received nothing from my alienation of affection claims. I never thought I would get it. 4 wives nevertheless brought their husbands to light in subsequent divorces. It wasn't all champagne and roses. In the process, I also hurt myself. It was not uncommon for me to run into someone familiar with my situation. For a while, the ridicule and teasing got out of control. I don't know if it was fortunate or unfortunate, but I didn't care. I already felt like a failure, so anyone's words didn't touch me. Some of these bastards were actually pretty smart. I was able to protect my kids from most of the collateral damage. This has always been my main concern. They were sad for a while, but soon recovered. The biggest victory was my return to ATI as Vice President of Design and Development. One way to escape from personal troubles was to return to programming. Over the course of 2 dismal years, I was able to develop an add-on to the main ATI software that allowed it to be easily integrated with 2 other popular competitor software packages. I founded my own company and started selling my development. Less than a year later, I received offers from all 3 companies to buy my company and my software. I received $15 million for my company and an incredible compensation package from ATI. I had been considering retirement for some time, but with no social life at all, I was convinced that if I didn't give myself a reason to get out of the house every day, I would become a recluse. My new income allowed me to hire a sweet little old lady who worked part-time as a housekeeper and nanny for the kids. A year later, Mrs. Margaret Jennings moved in full-time, living in the apartment above the garage of our new home. She was like a grandmother to my kids, mostly sweet and kind, but strict when necessary. What I valued most was the advice she could give to kids, the advice that only comes with experience. I loved my kids and did my best to be a caring and attentive father, but I was also damaged, scarred, and cruel. I also turned to her for advice. She was my rock when it came time to make decisions. The kids grew into well-adjusted adults, and I saw them and their families from time to time. Unfortunately, over time, our closeness weakened. I was in no way offended by them. It was better to keep me at a distance so that my bitterness would not infect their lives. Mrs. Jennings worked for me until the kids left for college. Then she retired. I offered her free room and board as a pension. She was a constant presence in my life for 15 years. She tried her best to get me to live again and find someone to share my life with. I appreciated her efforts, but in the end she died knowing that I would always be alone. I never really opened up to anyone again. My friendships were superficial and unfulfilling. I've never been on a date except for a few group dinners organized by casual friends. I have a well-deserved reputation for being an icy-hearted, merciless person who cannot be contradicted. For the most part, I was avoided, and I blame no one but myself for it. My sexual needs were regulated quite well. My ever-growing wealth allowed me to maintain a constant rotation of call girls. I paid generously for their time and the use of their bodies. Basically, I just had sex with them and sent them out the door. I really liked one of them. Her name was Candy. I later found out that it was, in fact, Mary Beth. She was a passionate and willing partner. I think I was more than a client to her too, but I could never burden anyone else with my demons. So when I felt she was getting too attached to me, I let her go. If you're wondering what happened to Linda, she had a hard life. She tried to talk to me for almost a year. I don't know exactly why she tried. Did she think we could reconcile? Or did she hope for a relationship with my kids? Maybe. I honestly warned her, but she didn't listen. She tried to stay in Denver, and I started following her. When she applied for a job, I made sure her work record was always there to greet her. When she started dating, which happened almost immediately, I sent her potential partners packages with wishes so that they knew everything about the woman they were letting into their lives. I didn't care if they wanted to keep her around after they found out the truth, but I didn't want her to be able to reshape history by ignoring it. I had to live with this every day, so it was only fair that she did too. As I said, my ex-wife continued a constant campaign of unanswered phone calls, emails that I never read or responded to, and always kept my email inbox full. I think some sick part of me wanted her to suffer. I believed that at the very beginning, it would be appropriate to seek professional help. Perhaps it would save part of my soul and allow me to return to a normal life. But in the end, I never went, and as time passed, it seemed too late to do anything. I could have changed my phone number, but I didn't. An assistant could sort my mail, but I always did it myself. I could block her incoming emails. This would prevent me from accidentally opening one of them. It was a stream of apologies that meant nothing. Of course, the situation got out of control. Of course, she always loved me. Hasn't she suffered enough? I responded with a gift and a simple note. I bought the trashiest lingerie I could find at her favorite store and wrapped it neatly in a clean white ribbon that really brought out the pink color of the box. I attached a beautiful, handwritten note. I'm sure she appreciated the symmetry when she opened the card addressed to the trashy one. One of her potential suitors tried to bring me to justice for tormenting my ex-wife. He showed up on my doorstep, full of liquid courage, pushing me back and knocking me over as I opened the front door. It was his mistake. Like I said, I'm nothing special. I didn't do any martial arts or special forces training. I was an ordinary guy. I've never been a violent person, hell. I've never even been in a fight. But what I had was rage, undiluted, unspent hatred for my wife and her lovers. He was the unfortunate recipient of my exit. In the end, I escaped with a good burn and a broken rib. He was lucky to be alive. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault and trespassing and received probation as a first-time offender. I think the years of reconstructive surgery and rehabilitation made a greater impression on him. Linda never tried to contact me again. I stopped following her after another year, when she found a full-time job cleaning rooms at a travel hotel in a town about 700 miles away in rural Kentucky. The only time I saw her was 14 years later at my daughter's wedding. I know the kids reconnected with Linda a few years after graduating from college. I made no attempt to stop them from finding her. The years have not been kind to her. She had gained at least 40 pounds and had deep wrinkles around her lips and other signs of smoking. This was a new trend. Overall, she looked old and haggard, but underneath it all, I still saw the woman I gave my heart to. I didn't feel anything for her, but I saw her. She sat alone in the bridal section near the back of the church. Her interactions with my daughter were brief, cordial, but distant. She never tried to talk to me. For the rest of the evening, we did not come closer than 30 feet to each other. She stood on the street and waited for a taxi. When I saw it on her finger, I smiled for the first time in a long time. She may have done a better job than I did. Judging by the small gold ring and minuscule diamond on her left ring finger, I walked up to her and looked at him for a few moments. When I raised my eyes to meet her gaze, there was deep sadness in her eyes. For the record, you ruined my life first. I looked down at her left hand, then back into her eyes. I'm glad you found someone. I hope he makes you happy. I quickly walked to my car. My driver waited. Good evening, Mr. Turner. Hope you had a pleasant evening, sir. Are we going to the club? It went as well as I could have hoped, Jonathan. Let's go straight back to the house. I think tonight I'd like to be alone. Of course, sir. As we drove away, I tried my best not to look back, but I caught a short wave of her hand. I spent the rest of that night in a strange state of melancholy. Seeing Linda after so many years brought back a flood of memories, both good and bad. I knew deep down that our relationship had been destroyed beyond repair, but some part of me still grieved for the woman I once loved. The next morning, I decided to focus on my future. The kids were grown and starting their own families. It was time for me to find some semblance of peace in my life. I began by cleaning out the garage, where I found the old wall safe with the money I'd hidden years ago. It was a reminder of my past self, a man who was broken and vengeful. I decided to donate a significant portion of it to a local charity that helped victims of domestic abuse. Maybe in some way, it would help me atone for the pain I had caused. As the months went by, I threw myself into work. ATI was thriving under my leadership, and I found satisfaction in my professional accomplishments. I also started volunteering at the local community center, teaching coding classes to underprivileged kids. It was rewarding to see their eyes light up when they learned something new, and it gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Despite my busy schedule, loneliness crept in from time to time. Mrs. Jennings had been right. I needed to find someone to share my life with. But after everything I'd been through, the idea of opening up to someone new was daunting. I'd built walls around my heart, and tearing them down seemed impossible. One evening, as I was locking up the community center, a woman approached me. She was in her mid-40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Hi, Claire," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard great things about your coding classes. My son is in one of them." I shook her hand, feeling a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. "Nice to meet you, Claire. Your son is a quick learner. He's got a bright future ahead of him." We talked for a while, and I found myself enjoying the conversation more than I expected. Over the next few weeks, we ran into each other often at the community center. Claire was a single mom, recently divorced, and we bonded over our shared experiences. She was patient and understanding, qualities I hadn't encountered in a long time. Eventually, I asked her out for coffee. It felt like a big step, but Claire's presence was comforting. Our first date was simple, just two people getting to know each other. There was no pressure, no rush, just an honest connection. As we spent more time together, I realized that Claire was different. She wasn't trying to fill a void or fix me, she simply accepted me for who I was. It was refreshing and healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. One evening, as we walked along the lakeshore, Claire turned to me. "Mark, I know you've been through a lot. I don't want to push you, but I need to know if you see a future for us." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "Claire, you've brought light into my life when I thought it was impossible. I don't know what the future holds, but I'd like to find out with you." She smiled, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope. We continued to see each other, slowly building a relationship based on trust and respect. It wasn't always easy, my past still haunted me, but Claire's presence made the journey worthwhile. I learned to let go of the bitterness that had consumed me. I forgave Linda, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to the anger only kept me chained to the past. Claire taught me that it was okay to move forward, to find happiness again. Years later, as I watched my grandchildren play in the yard, I realized that life had given me a second chance. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was a life filled with love and purpose. And for that, I was grateful. Thanks for tuning in to this story of betrayal, redemption, and new beginnings. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life tales. How would you handle finding out about a partner's infidelity? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay strong and take care.